Now, Connie Mack is with us. I guess when my chosen vacation home is in his district in the Fort Myers, Naples area, Southwest Florida. I never get down there, but I get down there around Christmas for 2 weeks. How are you, Congressman?
I'm doing great, Sean. How are you?
I'm good. I wanted to play this for you, this crisis catastrophe stimulus push by the president, to remind people, is this August 2nd deadline real, or is it phony, as I believe?
You know, it is clearly made. The date was picked by the administration and Obama. I think that Obama and most people would agree that he feels the only way he can force things on the American people that they don't want and don't deserve is to create a crisis. And he created this crisis, Sean, as you know, by spending money we don't have, and now wanting us to continue to spend money and to pay for it by raising taxes. And, you know, it's just unacceptable to the American people and to the Congress.
Well, I agree. And, you know, Trump just said that the only thing the GOP negotiators can do wrong here is make concessions just to get a deal through Congress. And he points out Obama's the one who's totally lost here. Obama's the one in over his head, and he's not somebody who's made any deals in his life. So, I agree. I agree with that. My recommendation to the leadership here in the Congress, back when Obama was kind of jerking everybody around, was to say, hey, step away from the table. It'd be like, Sean, if you went to a car dealership and you and your wife sat across the table, looked at each other and made an agreement on the kind of car you want, how much you want to pay, what the terms are. But there was no dealership representative on the other side of the table. Now, we can always do what Mrs. Hannity does. Don't ever let my wife go buy a car for you. Ever. Ever. This is how Mrs. Hannity buys a car. Oh, I'll take that one.
Well,
that's not a good way to buy a car.
No.
We now have a marriage agreement. She never gets to buy a car.
It sounds like an important agreement.
She walks into a dealer once and says, oh, really? Can I have it today? And the guy goes, sure.
Yeah.
And then she calls me and says, and I said, walk out of the dealership now. Anyway, but
that's the point in this whole negotiations. When the president wants to continue to move the goalposts, when the president hasn't even come up with one idea on his own. He's really good at saying no to everything else, but he hasn't come up with one single plan of his own.
That's why I'm infuriated. I don't know if you read the Wall Street Journal editorial today or the Weekly Standard. They're now saying that, if you don't support the Boehner plan, you're helping Obama. That's not true. We've got to stop this power panic, catastrophe crisis mentality that forces us to bail out banks, insurance companies, Wall Street. Obamacare gets passed this way. The stimulus gets passed this way. And that's why I wanted to have you on. And I regret that when I had you on TV last time in studio, we were supposed to talk about this and we didn't. And I had Rand Paul on yesterday, and he's now signed on to the Senate to your bill in the House. When did you first propose this, by the way?
We proposed it. We've been working on it for months, but we proposed it about 6 weeks ago.
All right. I'm going to ask Paul Ryan about it. He's joining us later in the hour. Later next hour. He's going to join us at the top of the hour. And I asked Speaker Boehner about it yesterday, and he seemed intrigued by it. Why don't you explain in your words how you can get us to a balanced budget, I believe, within 6 years?
Yeah, it is. Thank you, Sean. It is. What I love about this plan is it's so simple for people to understand and relate to. So what my plan does is we cut 1% or 1 penny out of every federal dollar a year for 6 years. After 6 years, we cap spending at 18% of GDP, which is historically where it's been, balances the budget in 7 years, and after 10 years, we end up cutting over $7.5 trillion. And the pitch is this to people who might be skeptical. There isn't one person, Sean, listening to your radio show or watching you on TV that hasn't had to take 1 penny out of every dollar of either their home budget or their business budget. And for the federal government to say that not only can they not cut 1%, but we have to try to agree upon continuing growth and spending, it doesn't make sense. People understand that we're upside down. I mean, the debt to income or revenue ratio, if the government was an individual, we couldn't qualify for a credit card.
Let me make sure. What you're saying is very profound here, because what you're saying is that we are basing all of these plans combined based on an assumption that federal spending will go up what percent every year? Well,
in the next 3 years, the percentage is around 7.5%.
A year?
A year.
So, in other words, for the next 3 years, government spending is going to be 7.5% higher next year from this year.
Yep.
And then 7.5% higher the year after,
yep.
And then 7.5% higher the year after that. You're saying, all right, let's look at the 2011 budget.
Right.
And let's hold, next year we'll live within that budget and then cut 1%.
That's right.
And do that for the next 6 years, and you say we get to a balanced budget in 6 years.
No, we get to balanced budget in 8. So after 6 years, we cap it at 18%, and in the 8th year, we balance the budget.
Well, why don't we have a vote on that?
Look, Sean, if everybody listening to the show would, I would suggest that people call the White House and call the president and tell him, let's get serious about cutting spending and getting our fiscal house in order. But they could also call the leadership here in the Congress and say, we want to support the Mack Penny Plan.
Now, I was emailing you about midnight last night, and you've caught wind that I've been talking a lot about your plan, and we had it on radio yesterday, and I've been promoting it on TV. And you explained one thing to me that I didn't know either, and that was that, hey, there's flexibility in your plan. You don't have to cut 1% across the board. Congress can make decisions, for example, if they wanted to cut the Department of Energy 10% and put more money in defense or vice versa.
That's right.
They'd have the flexibility, but it would be across the board mandated if they didn't do it.
That's right.
So it's almost like a balanced budget plan, except in an expedited fashion, and we'd get out of the mess we're in, and I guarantee you it would probably keep our AAA bond rating.
Absolutely. If we passed this bill and said we were serious about stopping the gimmicks in the budgeting process, and we were going to reduce spending, we would save our credit rating. This is immediate, and it's what I love about it is it's so simple for people to understand. And the other point you just made is I think is important because Mr. Coburn last night on the air kind of misrepresented the bill. He said something about it's the chicken's way out. But I
corrected him on that.
I know, and I appreciate that because what we do is we say, hey, to the Congress, we have to work together to find out to make the requisite 1% cuts. But if we fail, there will be the remainder of that 1% will be done by across-the-board cuts. So there's no getting out of it. There's no ducking it. The cuts have to be made. And to get these cuts done, that means we need to look at reforms to Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. We need to look at all things. But the Congress has the flexibility to do it if they fail. If we fail to do our job, then there would be an across
the board. By the way, that's not really any different than a balanced budget amendment. In terms, the balanced budget amendment would demand cuts, and that you could argue that was the chicken's way out too, in a way.
Right.
Which I don't think is true, and I think we've got to put handcuffs on Congress because they're getting their power by spending money.
Look,
See, this is what's frustrating to me.
Sean, sorry, we have to have a balanced budget amendment because one thing the Congress has proven over and over again.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It can't live within its means.
It's impossible to live within its means. Yeah. I don't think most people understand baseline budgeting, and we've been discussing it, and nobody seems to. But this is so simple. Yeah. I'm pretty certain that in 5 minutes' time, maybe I'll do this test on my daughter who gets home in about an hour. And I explain it to her, an increase every year. We go up increasing 7.5% every year. Then you're spending more money. And if you just say, okay, I'm going to live within this year's budget. At times in my life when I didn't have any money, when I was starting out my adult life, I spent a lot less year to year because I didn't have the money.
Right.
So it doesn't seem to me like a major sacrifice to say that government growth is, in other words, we're almost saying we're going to freeze government growth for 6 years at current levels and then just cut 1% a year for 6 years and then 18% GDP 2 years after that. And then we're balanced and we're on our happy way again.
Absolutely.
And does this meet all the obligations? Because I know the devil's always in the details. This meets our obligations for Social Security, Medicare, debt ceiling, veterans, defense, and everything in between.
Well, again, the answer is yes. But this is where the Congress must act. So if the Congress fails to act, then every program would be touched. And that's what I love about this plan is it says to the Congress, you can't hide, you can't duck and run. You've got to find ways to cut the budget in a responsible way. If you don't, then it's going to be an across the board.
How do you address the idea that future Congresses don't have to abide by what you pass here?
Well, there's absolutely nothing you can do about that issue.
Except a balanced budget amendment to couple with this.
That's exactly it. So you put a balanced budget on top of this is the only way to do it. And this gets us starting to cut our budget today, right away, and balance the budget in 8 years. And if you add on a balanced budget amendment on top of that, it will say then, because we all hear the arguments that a balanced budget amendment is going to take so long to pass and get ratified by the states. If we balance our budget now by doing the Mack Penny Plan, and then we put a constitutional amendment, balanced budget amendment on top of that, it's best of both worlds. We balance our budget, and we ensure that future Congresses do not spend more money than we take in.
I asked Speaker Boehner about it. Have you talked to him? And Paul Ryan's coming up at the top of the hour. Have you talked to him about this?
I have talked to Paul Ryan about it, and I have talked to the Speaker about it as well on a number of occasions. I ran into him today. He asked me for more information on the plan, which I am getting to him as we speak.
That's, you know what, and he seemed pretty, honestly, I thought he seemed enthusiastic about it yesterday. I don't know if you heard it.
I did hear it. I heard it and was pleased that you asked him. And
you know, I'm like your PR agent.
I like it. You're hired.
You know, but in all honesty, this isn't about any one person. I am scared to death right now that this country, and I'm not, this is not Obama catastrophic talk here. I'm looking at $25 trillion in debt, and this country heading down the tubes and becoming Greece. And then the austerity measures that will have to be implemented may not even work, and we're still going to head for bankruptcy. I mean, even Greece was downgraded to worthless the other day. So, you know, these are real problems that the country has, and they've got to be solved. But, all right, now, is there anything?
Let me just, if
I only got about a minute.
Add to that. This is the biggest challenge we have this country faces. And what we're talking about, all of these debt negotiations right now, debt ceiling, is raising the debt ceiling, you know, $2 trillion, $2.4 trillion, and everyone needs to know that means they're anticipating in less than 2 years we will have $17 trillion in debt.
Yep.
The reason that our
headed at 25.
The reason our AAA rating is going to go down is because our debt to revenue ratio is too high.
All right. Listen, Congressman Connie Mack, I'm going to have you back on TV later this week. I really appreciate it. Connie Mack, you there? Thank you very much. I'm sorry we're just out of time here, okay?
Thank you so much, Sean.
All right, we'll talk soon. Connie Mack of Naples, Florida.